The following is a conversation with Dave Pascoe. Dave is a health enthusiast, a biohacker, and an amazing human being. During our conversation, I learned so much and I made a new friend. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Dave, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to meet with me here. With this conversation, I would like to get to know you a bit better, kind of give people a bit of a background on you. Hopefully, we have a great time. So, to start out, can you just tell me about your childhood, what it was like growing up, where you grew up, what life was like for you?
I started out very small. No. Um, yeah, I had kind of a weird childhood. I had a lot of questions growing up as a kid, and my dad didn't have a whole lot of patience for my questions, so he used to tell me, you know, David, shut up with all these stupid questions. In fact, it got to be a joke. After a while, I'd ask a question, and he'd say, "Hey, David, you know what?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I know. I'll shut up." But I think he actually did me a favor because in not answering my questions, he made me go figure it out myself. Like I had to look to other people. And so I was always looking to the other adults in my life to see what it was they were doing that made them successful. So, for instance, financial. Why did some families have like bigger houses than us? What did they do for a living? Uh, to get that job, they had to go to school. Huh, that's interesting. There was definite paths that they took to their financial freedom that other families just opted not to take. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. And the same with relationships. I watched people have just wonderful relationships where they just got along. They were like best friends. And then, other couples where they just bicker at each other constantly. And I wanted to know what made those relationships work or not work. And then, of course, health and fitness too, and longevity. That was a big one for me as well. I watched people age gracefully and healthfully, and then others, at a pretty early age, looked haggard and beat up and had all kinds of diseases and sickness. And I started noticing patterns about what people were doing that either caused them to be successful or not so successful. And health and fitness was, one of those things, like what people ate, how they drank. I noticed that alcohol aged people a lot. And I see that today. The people I went to high school with that partied a lot look quite a bit older than those that didn't party. It's just basic stuff like that, really. I was kind of a weird kid, I guess. I was able to step back and look at things rather than just follow what my parents did, because my parents, weren't, like I said, they weren't answering my questions. And my dad was kind of standoffish about me, which I didn't understand. I was littler than my older brother, and they would always say, "Oh no, you're too young," So my dad and my brother would go off and do things together. But then, even as I got older, it was still that way, and I never understood it until much, much later in life when my dad explained that my mom was always very critical of the way he raised us. And so when I was the youngest of three. He says, "Okay, you raise that one about me." And so that's I'm a little bit different from my brother and my sister, just totally different upbringing.
That's really interesting. What did your dad do for a living?
He was a senior safety technician at a Ford Motor Company. So he worked with the crash test dummies, which was kind of cool as a kid because, he would bring home crash test dummy heads and hands and, I would take those to school. And yeah.
That's super cool. What kind of hobbies or interests did you have growing up?
I was really big into space, like astronomy. At the time when I was maybe 14 or 15, Skylab was around. It was I guess now we have the International Space Station, but Skylab was the iteration before that. Coincidentally, you're familiar with Julie Gibson Clark?
That sounds familiar, but I'm not sure who that is.
She, I believe she is number 8 on the Rejuvenation Olympics, right behind Brian.
That's where I've seen her name.
Yeah. And I love talking about her because she's such a cool person. I've got to meet her, thankfully, through that. But her dad was Edward Gibson on Skylab. And I had posters of him on my bedroom wall as a kid, which just cracks me up. I'm thinking, wow, I mean, what a geek I was to start with, right? But then to meet her all these years later and to be able to talk to her about her dad, I thought was kind of cool.
It's so weird how small the world is and how connected these things start to become. Did you play sports in school or?
Okay, so there's another story. My grandfather was really, really athletic. I mean, he was good at anything that he did. He had trophies for softball, for bowling. I mean, you name it, he was good at it. He was a heavy drinker, so he used to go into bars and he would challenge people. Like he would bet them that he could jump through a broom handle, like holding a broom handle with both hands, and he could literally jump through it without letting go of the broom. He could do like one-arm push-ups and go down and pick up a matchstick off the floor, and that's, he would bet people like that. Super athletic guy. My dad, on the other hand, completely the opposite. So I guess my grandfather was sort of a mean drunk. So when it came to like throwing the ball to my dad, he wouldn't do underhanded soft pitches. I mean, he would just fly the ball at my dad. Of course, my dad didn't appreciate that very much, didn't like getting hit. My grandfather thought that was the funniest thing in the world. So my dad was very sports adverse. So when I grew up, he didn't really teach us to do anything. We didn't learn to play catch. I think we played Frisbee at some point. But yeah, growing up, I didn't do any sports. I wanted to play football. I was really excited about playing football. I played a lot, like threw a lot in elementary school. And then in junior high, I was really expecting that I was going to play football. And then I got braces on my teeth. And my parents said, no way, you're not. So that kind of killed my dream of being the high school quarterback. And then when it came time to, I guess it was probably my senior year, my friends were running track. And I wanted to run track with them. But my parents said, no, if you've got time for after-school activities, you've got time to get a job for college. So.
Where did you go to college?
Michigan State.
And what did you study?
Computer science and psychology. Computer science was my primary, and then the psychology was just fun. I just devoured all those books for the heck of it.
After you got done with college, what did you go into from there?
So, I got my first job as a systems analyst. So I did systems analysis and programming. Always been a programmer. I mean, I think I learned maybe more than a dozen different programming languages that most of them don't even exist anymore.
Before you got to college, were you tampering or messing around with programming?
Yeah, actually in high school. 1977, I learned my first programming language, which was Fortran 77, and I was still in high school.
How did you get into that?
There was just a computer class that was offered, and it sounded pretty cool. And and I was really good at it. I mean, at first it was hard. I couldn't, grasp it, but I figured if I stick with it long enough, it would start to sink in, and it did. In fact, in high school, before we graduated, as high school kids, we participated in the University of Detroit computer competition, and we ended up taking third place, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
We weren't too bad. I was a high school hacker too. I probably shouldn't admit this, but I hacked into Wayne County Intermediate School District's computer system, again, when I was in high school. And I was able to change like anybody's grades in the county. I didn't, of course, because it was like me and probably two other kids that they would have looked at first because we were the geeks. So yeah, I didn't dare, but just to have that power was pretty fascinating. And that was right about the time that movie, the one with Matthew Broderick, War Games, came out. And I so identified with that movie. I was like, oh my gosh, this is my life. This is scary. I guess I never really thought about hacking into government systems. That would have been probably crossing a big line. So I didn't do that.
Could have been interesting.
But, here in Detroit, we've got like the big three automakers. So I was pretty much all over their networks too as a kid.
Wow. So from being a systems engineer, I saw that you ended up working in cybersecurity, network security. So how did you make that transition, and And what was that like?
Well, I figured being a hacker and understanding the mindset of a hacker, I really wanted to get into that so I could prevent people from doing the things that I did. And so to me, it was a pretty good transition from being a hacker to somebody that works on the security side.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about your journey into health and fitness. I noticed on the other podcast that you did, he asked you about your journey into longevity, but I'm curious about the health and fitness component of it before you really started thinking about longevity.
Well, girls can be the driver for a lot of things in life. And I think in high school, I started seeing that, girls like guys with muscles. So that was a big driver for me. And so, yeah, I started playing with weights in the backyard. And I was actually way bigger then than I am now. It's a lot easier to get bigger when you're younger, but I have a lot of trouble putting muscle on now. It can be difficult. But then I saw the movie Rocky that came out in 1976, I think, 75, 76. And that was a huge influence on my life. So, I would crack the raw eggs and drink those and then go put on a sweatsuit, go jogging, see the neighborhood. I mean, anything that, Sylvester Stallone did, I had to emulate. So that was my big start into health and fitness. And of course, through the years, I realized that, health and fitness are two completely different things. A lot of people don't understand that. But, I mean, you can look at these guys that, the big weightlifters, huge, huge muscles, but metabolically, they're just destroyed. I mean, they're not, they're not really healthy, but they were very, very fit. And then on the other hand, I guess you could be very healthy, but not fit, not be strong. I think that's something you have to worry about as you get older, about not having enough muscle, becoming sarcopenic. You could still be really healthy, but if you don't have enough muscle and you keep losing muscle as you age, you're going to be in deep waters after a while.
So knowing what you know now about health and longevity, how would you go back and change your early intro into fitness and how you were working out in your younger years?
When I was working with weights on my own, I mean, I had no clue what I was doing. Most people back then didn't really know. They just followed what somebody else told them to do. In fact, I remember going into, I can't remember, I think it was called BioFit back then. I had a friend of mine that worked there. And he took me through a workout where he was basically screaming at me the whole workout, like, come on, push it, And I hated that. That was not my cup of tea. I had parents that yell at me all the time, so I didn't want people yelling at me while I was working out. So so I just sort of did whatever I thought was right, working out with weights, but I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't until way later in life when P90X came out. I was probably 45, 46 when that came out. And that pretty much changed, I'd like to say it changed my life. I've been doing P90X ever since. I don't know if you're familiar with P90X, but they've got it's a really good plan. It's a 14-day plan. I'm not doing a commercial for them, but I just want to explain that every other day is a load-bearing, like a weight-bearing type of workout, and then the days in between are cardio. So it really covers the gamut. They've got yoga, plyometrics, cardio, Kempo karate. I mean, it's just a mix of so many different things. It's just a great way to move your body, and you're pretty much hitting every muscle.
I love that. Yeah. I was first introduced to P90X, I want to say in probably 2013. I started doing, I think it was P90X3, the one where it's just the shorter, like ab ripper X.
Was 3 the ones where they did the crazy stuff on the balls, or was that 2? I can't remember. A lot of balancing.
I don't know if 3 is the one where they're messing around with the balls. I did P90X ab ripper X pretty much every day though for like 2 years. I know they say not to do it every day, but I loved it so much that I got to the point where I could do it back to back. Do you still do P90X today though?
I do. Yeah. Yeah, when I'm running, I'll usually substitute the cardio days for a run. When I first saw it, I'm a skeptic with everything. Okay, so when I first saw the infomercials for it, I thought, well, this is a bunch of bull. That's not going to work. So I decided to follow the plan just to prove that it didn't work. And I thought, well, if it does, that's a bonus. But if it doesn't, I can tell people that's just garbage. But wow, did I see the difference in myself after 90 days? Well, I actually saw it 30 days in, and 60 days in was even more pronounced, but 90 days in, wow.
I'll have to try the original programs. So are you doing P90X1 then for the most part?
Oh yeah. Still a big fan of Tony Horton. He's got his YouTube channel, so I love checking in on him every so often. He's older than me, and he's in just amazing shape.
That guy was ripped back at P90X3. I remember seeing his physique and I was like, man, that is goals right there.
In fact, I screwed up my shoulder trying to do something I saw him doing the other day.
Oh, really?
I mean, I just got exosomes in this shoulder because I had just a little bit of a rotator cuff issue. And I was feeling so good that I saw Tony doing this thing in his backyard on a bar. So I've got 2 rings in my backyard. So I was doing the rings and I was doing the flips and stuff with it. And then I just felt like this, oh crap. Yeah. So now I'm a little sore, a little stiff in this shoulder. So I just have to work it out, tough through it. So I'm still impressed with him to this day for the stuff that he can do.
Yeah, same. So I saw on your website that you're doing marathons, and I recently ran my first full marathon about
All right.
2.5, 3 months ago. And it was brutal. I mean, I don't kind of getting into this world of longevity. I'm 24 years old, so I'm on the young end of people in the space, I would say. But I also like pushing myself and trying new things like marathons. And I felt like while doing the training for it, that I was just breaking down my body more than I was building myself up. In fact, it became really hard to stick to a clean diet. My sleep would be messed up after doing the long, like I had 2 20-milers in my training. Like after those, I just felt completely broken down for a couple days. So I'm curious why marathons, how that's been for you, and what got you into that, and if you still plan to keep doing them.
So, gosh, this would have been back in 2012. A group of guys came to our church from World Vision, or representing World Vision. World Vision, by the way, is the world's largest non-governmental supplier of clean water to developing nations. And they had this plan to form a running group called Team World Vision. Actually, to be fair, I think that already existed in Chicago. These 2 guys decided they wanted to bring it to Detroit and start with our church. So they recruited 250 of us from church that might be interested in running and learning from seasoned marathoners how to actually do a marathon, learn how to fuel, learn how to train. And most of us probably had never even run a 5K. I was one of those. So they took us from couch to marathon, which was amazing. It was just a great experience. So I did it, I think, more for the intellectual. I mean, it's very physical, but I thought, where else am I going to get an opportunity to learn from people who already know how to do it, who are willing to share their tricks, tips, and insider stuff with me. So that's what got me into doing it. And so I did our first marathon was Chicago in 2012. And I hated the training. I hated running, but it was for charity. We were raising money to build wells in Africa. So the cause was great. In fact, I still support Team World Vision today, raising money for that. I'm going to be doing Mount Kilimanjaro here at the end of July through the beginning of August. It's an invitational with World Vision. So I'm really excited about that. But anyway, back to the marathon stuff. I loved the actual marathon itself. The Chicago Marathon was amazing. Just people come out to cheer you on, and it's through the whole race course. Wonderful. It's a big party. I always said I would do that again in a heartbeat. But I was really done with marathon running. I was going to be a one and done kind of guy until I heard that my group was going to run Detroit the following year. And I thought, oh, well, shoot, how can I not run my own hometown? Yeah. So I got sucked into doing it again for another year. And I found I actually got a little better because I'm one of those slow AF. I'm about a 6 hour and 20-minute marathoner where, I mean, some of the other guys were like 3 hour marathoners and Boston qualifiers and very impressive people. That's not me. Um, yeah, I pretty much put the endurance in endurance running the way I do it. But I was in good company. A lot of other people were the same way. But then, then I was done after the two. I just ended up serving with Team World Vision because I loved the community. Camaraderie with all of my running team was awesome. I didn't want to stop fundraising for the charity, so I kept fundraising through the years, and then just handing out water or running a cheer station for the team. Whatever I could do to support was what I did for the next several years. But then, this would have been 2022. The group decided that they were going to get together and do a 10-year anniversary of our very first run, and we were going to do Chicago. So I came out of running retirement to do another marathon, and I actually loved running. I don't know what happened. I don't know what changed in me, but it wasn't horrible. It didn't suck as bad as it used to.
That's awesome.
I don't even know how to explain that. It probably the difference in my lifestyle, eating better and sleeping better and just doing all the basics better. I was a much better runner that much later in life. In fact, I ended up PRing even with a messed up ankle. And I think both my knees were pretty screwed up too. But I ended up doing better than I did, 10 years earlier. So I was pretty happy with that.
So I'm curious, did you notice that you were breaking yourself down quite a bit during the marathon?
Oh, yeah.
training?
Yeah, marathon running just tore me down. I'm pretty lean as it is. I don't have a lot of body fat. And so when I'm out there running, the only thing I've got to burn is muscle. And and that's really not a good plan. So I could eat a lot. I added carbs back into my diet to get me through, running. But yeah, I would end up burning so much muscle and then having to build it back up again. I went through a lot of those thanks to marathon running.
Do you think you'll do it again?
If somebody comes up and says, hey, we're going to do a 20-year anniversary when I'm age 70, because I just happened to be turning 50 in 2012. So that's why I'm like, yeah. And so when we did it in 2022, I was turning 60. I'm like, okay, yeah, 10 years later, I'll give it a shot. So maybe if they say that when I'm 70, I don't know. I don't want to ever say never. I might be talking, but it would be the stupidest thing I ever did just because it'll tear me down. So I'll have to bulk up with some fat prior to that, I guess.
So I'm curious, how do you balance the goal of longevity, biohacking with some of the other things in your life, like marathons, things that typically aren't as good for the protocol for the longevity? How do you balance and choose between what you're going to actually focus on and do?
Well, it's interesting. The longevity thing really wasn't a goal of mine. My primary goal is just to live as healthily as I can for as long as I'm alive. I mean, that's it. That was just as simple as my goal was. I didn't want to be like my parents and like a lot of other people that I have seen that spend the last 20 some years of their life sick. Like my folks ended up getting cancer for the last 20 years of their life. So I ended up moving back in with them in 2001 because they both had cancer at the same time, and weren't able to take care of each other. So my mom got breast cancer years earlier, and my dad was able to take care of her. And then he got tongue cancer, and she was able to take care of him. But this time they were both down with mom. Mom had another breast cancer, and dad had prostate cancer. And I was living in North Carolina at the time and had just got laid off, along with our whole corporate staff. So it was just the perfect timing for me to move back in and take care of them. And so I moved in and took care of them for the last 21 years of their life.
I'm really sorry about that.
Along with other stuff. I mean, my dad had COPD, high blood pressure, borderline diabetic, pretty much all the stuff that, seems normal these days. But or it seems normal for aging, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, they never took care of themselves. They smoked, they drank, they never exercised. You know, all the signs were there. I mean, they saw the people on TV like Jack LaLanne and all the folks that were telling them back then, you know, what to do right, but they weren't interested.
I feel like that's a lot of people now. I mean, we probably have the best access to information ever of what to actually do right, but so many people just don't care enough.
I think among my friends, I'm just sort of an oddity. I don't see anyone desiring to emulate anything that I do. They're just like, huh, yeah, you're doing that? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, me too. Especially being 24, most people are like, "Why do you go to bed at 8:30 every night? Like what are you doing?"
But you're doing it right, because doing it at your age really sets the scene for later on in life. I kind of wished that I had some smarts earlier on in my life, but we didn't know a lot of the stuff that we know now.
So you know that saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Yes,
They're
absolutely.
saying that that applies to parasocial relationships now. So people that you're spending time with over the internet. Like if you have Tim Ferriss in your ears for 7, 8 hours a week, then it's, you know, you're picking up on Tim Ferriss's habits, beliefs, the way he speaks. You're picking up on that, and you become an average of those people too, I think.
That's so true.
So back to longevity and biohacking. When did that become an interest of yours, and what did that look like getting into that?
Back in 2012, when I was turning 50 and doing my first marathon, I had read or heard about something called telomeres, and that there was a test to be able to measure your telomeres to see how well you're aging. And I thought, that'd be interesting. I'm like Mr. Joe Cool. I'm doing P90X. I'm doing marathon training. You know, I'm in great shape. I was positive that if I took that test, it was going to come back and tell me I had the telomeres of a 20-year-old. So I took this test, and I was shocked by the results. It told me I had the telomeres of a 68-year-old. And again, I was just turning 50. So, I mean, that's 18 years older than my biological age. And I thought, whoa, you know, something's wrong here. I thought I was doing everything right. You know, based on everything I knew, I should be really healthy. But this test is telling me that metabolically, I'm not. So what am I missing? Oh, of course, that made me, you know, start doing the doctor of Google, you know, really digging in deep. Like, all right, what are telomeres? How do they work? Why am I long? Along with the test, there also came with it a consultation that you could get. And so I called and made the appointment. And I was kind of surprised because they started off the call asking me questions about my lifestyle. Lifestyle? I'm thinking to myself, what does that have to do with anything? All right. I mean, silly now because we know now that lifestyle is everything. But back then, I had no clue. This was total news to me. So I started explaining that, yeah, I'm a network security engineer at this point. My job is incredibly stressful. I'm taking care of both of my parents who are dealing with cancer. I'm doing P90X. I'm marathon training. And they're like, whoa, 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 hold on. You don't have to go any further. We've seen this before. They said, but you actually have multiple things. I said, we've seen it before in people that are like endurance athletes. They're running really long miles and putting a lot of wear and tear on their body. They'll have an issue with telomeres. We've seen it before with caretakers. You know, just the stress that you have to deal with of changing diapers, for instance. Just the normal day-to-day for a caretaker is just terribly stressful. And then, of course, just having a stressful job on top of all that and P90X. I guess my lifestyle was eating me alive, and I didn't realize it. So the stress was slowly killing me. So they suggested that I, like look into things maybe like yoga and meditation, which made me laugh because I used to do yoga all the time. I was really big into meditation, But at some point, I just kind of forgot about it. Amongst the day-to-day hustle and bustle, all those things took a back seat, and I just stopped doing them. So that was a wake-up call for me to pick up those habits again and really start being serious about them, uh, and finding some bliss in life, which thankfully church did for me. I was a greeter at church, and that was my happy place. That helped a lot. It was a good escape from my everyday life. Um, yeah, so that's when I really started the deep dive and finding out everything I could about just how the cells work, real nutrition, because I was eating okay, I thought, but it was still a lot of packaged foods. I think my mom was still cooking somewhat at that point, and she just loved doing the easy boxed things and canned things out of a bag, and so everything we were eating was processed. That led me more into eating more like just whole raw foods. Anything with a barcode on it, it was out the window. I don't want to do those anymore, which was a big bone of contention between my parents and I, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, so I started listening to, well, actually, I found a blog. I think it was Ben Greenfield's blog, and I began reading that. And he would produce these super long blogs. I mean, they were long and very, very detailed, lots of deep science. And I remember reading these things and struggling to understand a lot of it. So I would end up having to look up stuff. But the more and more I got into it, the more I started to understand, and the more I loved it. But it was very time consuming to go through all that material to read. And then I found out he started a podcast. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I can listen now. I don't have to be stuck reading. So I began listening to his podcast. He might have had the podcast before that. I don't know. But that was about the time I figured out he had a podcast anyway. And then his podcast led me to, I think, Tim Ferriss was another one I picked up early on, Dave Asprey, just anybody I could in those early days. I was just feeding my brain with whatever they had to disseminate. And I learned a lot. Again, I didn't understand all of it, but it took probably about a year of continuously listening to this stuff in my head that it was beginning to stick, like autophagy. Oh, mitochondria. Oh, okay. What are all these things? Yeah. Things that I think most biohackers or most of us are pretty familiar with now, but they were new concepts to me then.
I've kind of been on a similar journey over the past few years where I'm trying to learn a lot of this stuff. So you mentioned meditation, yoga, and how stressful your life was. I'm curious how you got into meditation and yoga. What made you interested in those practices?
I could attribute that to my mom. My mom used to do some yoga stuff while I was really little. She'd be watching a yoga workout or something on TV. And so I naturally followed along because that's what mom was doing. I guess that's what people do, right? So, no, that got me into doing yoga really early. Meditation, I found on my own. Um, when I was like 4 years old, my sister told me about Jesus and how he died on the cross for our sins, and that he was, crucified and just tortured, basically. That he died for us, and that really profoundly impacted me. To think that somebody would give their life for me that I didn't even know. Wow, I'm going to get emotional just talking about that now. And so I wanted to know everything I could about this guy, but I would ask people, again, stupid questions. I wouldn't get any good answers. I tried reading our Bible. We had a huge King James version of the Bible, and it was written in basically Old English, and I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. Again, I was older than 4 at that point, but when I could read, that's when I tried getting into the Bible. Yeah, I even went to catechism for a while, and I would ask questions of the nuns, and they did not like to be questioned. I remember asking a question because I heard like my older brother asking this, and it was probably a smart alecky question, but was too young and too dumb to realize that it was a smart alecky question. It seemed like a logical question to me. I asked the nuns that if God wants us to love everyone, should we love murderers too? And I remember the nun just hauling off and just smacking me and saying, "Don't be a little smartass." And I was like, okay. And from that, I learned don't ask questions. Just keep coloring and, doing the nursery school stuff they wanted us to do, and don't ask questions. So I ended up, in a roundabout way, going through just about every other religion because I could find books on those that I could understand. So, yeah, I learned about, Eastern religions and philosophies, Hinduism, Tao. I mean, just anything I could get my hands on, I read. Even Native Indian sorcery, I read books on. There's a whole series by Carlos Castaneda called the Don Juan series. There's maybe like 12 books of that. I don't even know how many there are. But I devoured everything that I could. It wasn't until when I moved back in to take care of my folks that I started, attending a church. My buddy took me to church for the first time. I asked him to. My lifestyle prior to that was not a good one. I would consider myself spiritual, but not religious. But I knew something was missing. Now, I mean, the phrase is there was a God-sized hole in my life, and I just didn't realize it was there. I mean, I knew there was the hole. I just didn't know what I was missing that needed to fill it. So when I moved back in here, I came back to Michigan. I asked my buddy who was, very church-going and could recite the Bible, and he did often to me. I asked him to take me to a church, take me to a good church. There was several things that I had targeted for my life at that point. I think setbacks are a great thing in life. Whenever life throws you a curve, you lose a job, or you have a bad relationship, those things are probably the best things that can ever happen to you because they make you start questioning things. They make you reevaluate your life. And so my reevaluation at that point was I wanted to go to massage school, which I did. I had always wanted to do that. I needed a new job, of course, when I was back here. And I wanted to find a church. So he took me to this little church. I remember it was so small that they called me out right away as the newcomer. Wanted me to stand up and give my testimony. And one, I'm deathly afraid of public speaking. So that was terrifying. Two, I didn't even know what a testimony was. I mean, I was baby Christian really at that point. So I don't even remember what I said. I think it was just an out-of-body experience when I stood up and they laughed at whatever it was that I said. So I was probably pretty stupid. But when we got out of there, I said to my friend, "Don't ever do that to me again. I don't want to be in that situation." And so the next week he took me to a different church, and the same thing happened. Exactly the same thing. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. No more churches. That's it. And so as the weeks went by, he found this big mega church out in Plymouth, Michigan. It's a good 30 miles away from here. And he's like, "You've got to come with me to this church. You're going to love it. There's a lot of hot looking chicks there." And I was like, "No, I don't want to go for that reason. I'm trying to find God." Okay. And to me, that's a terrible reason just to go find chicks. I mean, we were going out, every weekend at bars trying to find chicks. So I didn't want my church experience to be exactly like my bar life, which, was pointless and empty. So, so I resisted. And then as the weeks went by, he had all my other male buddies going except for me. So I finally decided to go. And I remember going in there and seeing two people on the stage, doing worship, that just impacted me so deeply. I had tears flowing down, and I didn't know why. And I was embarrassed because here I am. I'm in public. I'm amongst there's 3,000 seat auditorium here, and there's just people all over the place. And here I am just bawling, and nobody seemed to mind. Nobody seemed to notice or care. Nobody called me out as a newcomer. And I found I was completely anonymous. And I'm like, yes, this is my church. I love this. And I mean, and the talk was wonderful. Just everything about it was great. So that got me going to church. I don't even think this is what you asked me, but this is the rabbit hole I went down.
That's fine. That's fine. Wow, that's super interesting. I want to circle back a little bit. I'm curious with your exploration into all of these different religions. Did you ever begin practicing any other religions?
So, okay, yeah, I guess that was, you asked me about meditation, and that's the roundabout way that I started answering that question. Yeah, so I followed a lot of different meditation practices, but as far as worshiping other gods, no, I never did get into that because, I mean, knowing about Jesus and believing in him and knowing that there is, one true God, I was still very much, into Jesus. I just didn't know anything about him until I started that church. And then that's when I learned that there is an NIV version of the Bible that I could actually read and understand. So that started my whole life toward Christianity. Finally, the religion that I professed that I was finally learning about. But no, I mean, again, I learned, the yoga practices, for Hinduism, I didn't get into for the religious aspect of it all. I just did it because it was just a great way to stay flexible and be strong.
That's really interesting. I'll give you a bit of background on me to kind of frame this next question. I grew up in a very conservative religious upbringing. Conservative as in conservative Christian. In fact, my parents were and still are missionaries, and I grew up overseas in New Guinea, Papua New Guinea. So the interesting thing about living over there and growing up over there is there were so many different denominations of Christianity in the missionary community there. So I went to an international school, and at the international school, we had some people that were Buddhist, we had some people that were Catholic, Protestant, and then 1,000 different types of Protestant, Muslim people as well. I think there was one Hindu guy, but basically you just had this melting pot of people at the international school. And I remember going in, and kind of the way that I was raised was with this belief in exclusive truth. Like there's one set of truth, and the denomination I was raised in had that set of truth. That's what I grew up believing. And then I get to this school and I start to realize that everybody kind of thinks the same thing about their religion. Probably 70% of the people at the school, their parents were also doing mission work. And so, they had come from families who were deeply convicted in what they were believing. Anyways, this set me off in kind of questioning what I believed and what exclusive truth was. And I started to realize a lot of what you end up believing probably comes down to where you were born and the family you were born into. It really ended up setting me off on this journey where I didn't even know if I believed in God anymore. I'm still working through that now. Anyways, all that to frame this question here. I've noticed a lot of people in the longevity space seem to be agnostic or atheist even. And it seems to be that way because many religions actually tend to frame that the world is just going to keep getting worse, and then God's going to come back and we'll go to heaven. So this isn't our final destination. So why focus on longevity, and why try to live the best life that you can here when this is all temporary? I'm curious, have you thought about that? Is that something that you've kind of worked through? I'm really curious to know your thoughts on longevity, Christianity, this not being your final destination, if that's what you believe.
No, that's a deep one. Yeah, I mean, I've thought about if life is only supposed to be about suffering, why are we here? What's the point? I mean, we were put here for a reason, and yeah, we're here for a short time, but what is that reason if not to do our best and try to live a good life, however you define that, while you're here? And so I know a lot of people use that as an excuse, like, oh, we're here only a short time, so what's the point in all this, vanity? Why exercise? You could use that as an excuse for why do anything, really, which then is, it's not a good answer. I don't I don't subscribe to that as a good answer. Um, yeah, I don't think I'm answering your question though.
I feel like there's so many rabbit holes we could go down with this question.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I could go in a dozen different directions, but I've questioned the same thing that you probably have struggled with. I'm still of the belief, this is kind of blasphemy for like my Christian friends, but I'm still of the belief that all religions have truth in them about God. And I liked the aspect of learning about all of the different religions to see how they came to him. Yeah, even like the Native Americans, just their spirituality with, their connection to the earth. That still really resonates with me. A lot of people would dismiss that as new agey stuff, but I don't think so. I mean, I just think all of it's connected. I can't explain it. I can't describe it. It's just the feeling that I get. I mean, I get that all of us are connected. I think we're, it sounds funny to say, but I think that we're all part of God. I like to look at God as everything. God is everywhere and everything. And if possible, we are each just tiny individual cells within the larger body of God. And we all think we're separate, but we're not. We're part of that bigger thing. We're just living our little separate lives within our tiny little cell. That's kind of the way I look at life. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but
It might have been Tony Robbins that said this. Maybe sometimes we're only looking at one or two or three tiles in the mosaic, and we're missing a lot of the bigger picture.
yeah. I tend to agree with that.
What do I know?
Yeah. And I love that you're a Tony Robbins fan.
He's changed my life in a lot of ways. So I really like his stuff. I mean, he's a little funny sometimes, but
I found him in the mid 80s, maybe early 80s, and just devoured all his stuff too.
he's got this audio program, Ultimate Edge. I think I've done that maybe 6 or 7 times now. I'm okay working on the fundamentals over and over again. I'm okay with being bored.
It's funny because people always like to ask me what I think the most important driver for longevity is. And they always want to go directly to the supplements. But I tell them that to me, the answer is the least sexy answer. It's the basics. It's the fundamentals. It's nutrition. It's sleep. It's exercise. I mean, it is the stuff that we've known about forever. I mean, there have been people talking about this for a very long time, and I just don't think the majority of people listen. But as far as when I did my own measures and through the iterations of what I've been doing, when I changed up my diet, that's when my numbers just suddenly improved and everything fell into place. I just didn't realize how important diet was. I was good with sleep. I was good with exercise, probably a little too much exercise. I had to incorporate some more recovery days in. But diet was the total game changer. Yeah, getting away from all the processed garbage, eating more vegetables, fruit, grass-fed beef, just clean stuff. Trying to avoid doing damage and trying to focus more on repair.
I want to get more into the diet, sleep, and exercise and then expand on your protocol a little bit. Can you break down your exercise routine for us?
Gosh, it was last November that I bought a Carol bike, and I'm really liking that. The HIIT training is pretty good. It kicks my butt. That's more what I was doing prior to marathon training. I used to put on a 50-pound vest and I would go do sprints, and I absolutely loved that. I would like to get back to doing that again, although now I'll probably start with a 20-pound vest and work my way up. Um, HIIT training is awesome. I should do more of that. But I'll do the Carol bike. I'll do the P90X. I'm supposed to be training for Kilimanjaro right now, and I'm embarrassed to say that I haven't really been keeping up with the training plan. So I need to be getting off my butt and going out running more, but the weather's been pretty hot, and my treadmill's loaded with junk right now. So I have no excuse. I could clean that off and run on that. But so just about every other day, I'm doing the Carol bike, and then I'm doing the P90X in the morning. And I skipped that this morning so that I could do this interview with you, but I'll be doing that right afterwards.
Awesome.
But that's pretty much my exercise routine.
Let's talk about your diet a little bit. So I tried the chia nut berry bowl, or a similar rendition of it. I didn't get everything that you
did
had
a great
in there.
job on that, by the way.
Thank you. So tell me, what did I miss in the chia nut berry bowl? Like, do you actually put everything in there?
Believe it or not, I do. Yeah. I think it was you that you made the comment, like, I just think this guy throws in everything he can find, or something to that effect. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably pretty accurate. Yeah. Uh, I have all the nuts, like, pre-chopped up, and I wasn't as smart as you. I did it in a food processor, and I ground it like way too fine. So I've got two different bags. I've got one that's just almost like powder, and then the other that's better chopped like you did. So I'll do a mix of each of those when I make it together. But yeah, I mean, all the nuts, all the seeds, tons of powders, and then the spices I'm just pretty much exploring. This goes back to my dad too, because my dad was like, he hated anything with spice in it. So I mean, everything we had growing up was fairly bland. He would have a fit if my mom put any kind of spice in things. So I mean, now in my adult life, I'm exploring spices for the first time. So it's been a couple of years now where I've been throwing rosemary into everything, and some oregano, and a lot of the herbs that I'm growing in my basement. No, not those kind of herbs. But then a lot of powdered stuff too, a lot of the dried stuff, and I'm loving it. I'm loving all the mix of flavors, and I think, as you noticed, it didn't taste bad either. With all those strange spices mixed together, it's still pretty darn good.
It's an unusual flavor because there's nothing else. Maybe some Indian food comes a little bit close to it,
Yeah.
with the number of spices that they have in there, but it was unique, and it was really good. Can you talk a little bit about the reasoning behind putting everything in like that, and having as many things as you have?
So I'm going for maximum nutritional density. At least that's the goal in mind. And sure, I mean, people would say there's a lot of redundancies or duplications in there amongst all the nuts, but it's kind of reductionist, though, in a way, because I don't think we truly understand all of the different elements that we get from things today. I mean, we know more now today than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago, but I'm certain they're going to keep discovering more and more compounds that are in things that are beneficial to us. So that said, that's why I like the diversity of things that might seem similar, but I just think that there's a good potential that they're giving us other compounds that we just haven't explored yet that are beneficial.
Do you want to walk me through the rest of what you eat in a day?
Oh gosh. Sure. Yeah, so everybody likes to talk about how I start off with that green banana. That is the first thing that I eat, is the green banana. exactly for the reasons that you stated in your video. You're getting the best of the banana that it has to offer without all the sugars that build up in it as it ripens. Then I'll follow that up with the chia nut berry bowl. And then I may or may not eat a lunch. It just depends on how busy I get. And I'm usually pretty busy, so I totally forget about eating. But if I do eat, it's sardines, it's the mussels, it's the what's the other one? Clams. I just open the cans and I eat those. That's like the only canned food that I will eat at all is the seafood. I really like that. It's got the good omegas in it. And then I'll do bone broth with that. I like the snack on chlorella and pistachios if I snack at all. That's usually in the evenings. But for dinner, so like I guess one of the first things in the morning, if I'm gonna make something, I'll be pulling out either a chuck roast or some ribs, throwing that in the slow cooker with potatoes and carrots, or if it's ribs, I'll do that with sauerkraut. So I'll have that going all day long, so it's ready to eat by evening. Or I have an Instapot, so I'll pre-make some mushrooms. I'll pre-make some rice, so I can pull those out as sides that I can eat with whatever it is I'm eating. I'll cook up some acorn squash, so I'll have that where I can reheat that later. Oftentimes I'll steam some broccoli as a side. I mean, I like to have options so that I'm not eating the same thing all the time because that gets really boring. And when I end up making a chuck roast or ribs, it's a lot for just me. So I do end up eating that several days in a row. But that's the only reason why I'll eat the same thing for a couple days in a row. It's just because I make too much.
Kind of works as meal prepping a little bit there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm curious, how often does your diet change? Like, how often are you introducing new things into your diet, changing things out?
Good question. Oh, salmon too. I like doing salmon a lot. And every so often a grass-fed burger. So I feel like I'm switching it up all the time, but amongst that subset of things. So it's nice to have a wide repertoire that you can change between. And they're all easy things. I mean, I don't consider myself a cook. So if it's very simple to make, I'm all for it. I don't like to go through a lot of work for preparation for things, but my food prep, I guess, would be the most work I go through. But when I go out to eat with friends, yeah, I mean, I guess those are my cheat meals, if you want to call them cheat meals. I still try to pick the healthiest thing that I can find amongst those. Every so often, I will do a fried fish just because I love fried fish. I know it's terrible for me, but if I do that maybe once a month, it's not going to kill me. It doesn't seem to set my longevity back at all.
That's something that I appreciate about you, especially following you on Instagram. I feel like a lot of people in the longevity space kind of are a bit shy about if they're having a cheat meal or if they're going out with friends. They don't post anything about that. But I enjoyed following you while you're in Italy because it would just be like great looking food, amazing breakfast spreads. And I was like, wow, that's cool that you're actually posting that, because a lot of people tend to just share the highlight reel. I guess that is a highlight reel in one way, but a little bit different than a lot of people.
It's completely the opposite of my normal diet. I mean, 'cause I'm low carb. I don't usually do sugar. I don't usually do caffeine at all. And then to go to Italy where everything was high carb, and then you get those carb spikes and then you start crashing down. So then you got to go do the double espresso, to pick yourself back up again from there. And you can't just have the double espresso. You've got to do the cornetto with cream in it to go along with the espresso. So, I mean, that's kind of like the lifestyle that I was seeing that people were doing there. And so I did that. I rode the waves of the ups and the downs. Yeah, it was probably not real healthy.
How was it though? Did you enjoy it while you were over there? Or?
Oh, I did. Oh, the food was amazing too. The one thing about their food is they don't put all the crap into it that we do. It's not processed food at all. They're making it fresh moments before you sit down to eat it. I got to take 2 cooking classes while I was there, and saw how incredibly easy it was to make your own pasta, which they do before every meal. And it's just wonderful. It's got good, wholesome ingredients in it. It's super easy to make. Might take a little bit of time, but that's not that bad. Um, yeah, and so I think they warned us about restaurants there for tourists. They said when you're there, especially in Rome, they said walk around and listen to people talking. If they're speaking a language other than Italian, like English or German or French, don't eat there. They said that food is probably pre-made and frozen. So the true Italians will go down some dark little alley 2 blocks off the main strip, and they'll find this hole in the wall restaurant, mom and pop type shop. You'll hear nothing but Italian spoken there amongst the proprietors and the people visiting. And the food is fresh.
That's awesome. Did you measure your biomarkers before and after? Like, did you notice any changes in your biomarkers?
I did. Um, are you familiar with Dr. Michael Lustgarten? He has a YouTube channel of his own. It's called Conquer Age or Die Trying. Yeah, he measures every single thing he eats, and then he does statistical analysis on the food versus his blood markers to see how the food shifted his markers. It's fascinating, fascinating. I'm going to be doing a pod with him too, where I'm going to share all my blood work with him, and he's going to review it like he does his own, which I can't wait to see. But I did my post Italy blood work, and literally the day I came home from Italy, it was kind of surprising. There was a lot of things that I expected. I think if I haven't looked at it now, it's been many, many weeks, but pretty sure my cholesterol was higher. I think my triglycerides went higher. What really surprised me or shocked me, really, was my testosterone. And I blame more the lack of sleep and the long plane flight for this, but my testosterone over 2023 ranged from about 809 to maybe 1290 something.
That's
And
incredible.
without any, yeah, I mean, that's without like replacement hormone or anything. Um, but when I got home and tested after Italy, my my total testosterone was like 79,
Wow. Wow. So big dip from where you'd been.
almost non-existent.
Wait, you said 79?
79.
Oh my god. I thought you meant 790 at first. That's crazy.
No, no. I was like, oh my gosh, I told Michael, I'm like, look, I can't give you this blood work right now until I wait and do my next 30-day blood work because it would be a great podcast to show you how I destroyed my blood markers by going to Italy. But I think it would be more interesting for the viewers to see that I can actually get back what I had before by going back to my routines and my diet again.
So have you done that follow-up measurement or
So, yes. And how did that go? I'm trying to remember. Something happened again. Well, I know I had more travel there. I went to Dallas and I went to Vegas. Went to Dallas for Dave Asprey's biohacking conference, which was really cool. I can't remember. Trying to total blank on this, but yeah, something did affect my blood work again, and so I postponed it. I'm going to give him all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm not going to varnish any of it, but yeah, I'm due to retest here maybe next week, and we'll see. I've been actually off of my supplementation now. I have to package up all my vitamins for the month today. So I'll be back on all that. We'll see how that goes.
you're taking about 150 supplements a day, correct?
Yeah. That's actually individual pills though. That's not individual supplements. So in some cases I might be taking 2 or 3 of a particular. So that's counting tablets, to be fair.
Okay, before we get into supplementation and other nitty-gritty things in your protocol, let's talk about sleep. So can you walk me through your sleep protocol? things that you found that help you sleep better. And
I know Dave Asprey likes to talk about a sleep tracker he used to use back in the day, which is funny because I used the exact same sleep tracker. It was called a Zeo, and it was a headband, and it had a little thing that clipped on it, but the electrodes were right on your forehead, and so it was measuring brain waves directly, not indirectly through a ring or watch. Or I've got like 3 different fitness trackers on. Um, yeah, that was wonderful. I loved that thing. I've totally spaced again. What was your question? I'm sorry.
well, I'll ask the question again, but I'm curious about that sleep tracker. Do you still have it? Do you still use it?
No, well, they went defunct. They went out of business. And so for the longest time, I still had a stock of the bands because you had to change the bands out every so often. They would just get grungy. And then someone picked up the algorithm that they used to determine your sleep scores from the raw data. And I was using that algorithm for the longest time. So it was kind of a bootleg thing that was just the community that loved Zeo kept it alive for a while. And then, yeah, I guess my headbands ran out and there were no refills because they weren't manufacturing them anymore. So unfortunately, I had to let that go by the wayside. But that was a terrific tracker. I don't know why somebody doesn't bring that back.
Yeah, I'm surprised that that's not a popular solution now. Maybe it has something to do with comfort or just the accessibility of wrist and finger wearables. But
I think he referred to that as like birth control because you look so stupid wearing it.
yeah, yeah.
Nobody's going to want to be in bed with you if you're going to wear that thing.
Okay, so the question was sleep protocol. What do you do to ensure that you're getting the best sleep?
I used to try all the various supplements and stuff before bed. I mean, at one point it was said that, reishi is good to take, lion's mane, all these things that will help give you deep sleep or better REM. I tried all of the suggestions. I didn't find any of them particularly helpful. In fact, I think I sleep better when I don't do anything at all before bed. Changing when I eat dinner was a big change for my sleep scores. If I stop eating at least 3 hours before bed, my sleep scores are much, much better. It's hard to do when you have a social life, when you're out with friends. Everybody likes to eat late, and then you come home and you've got a full stomach and you go right to bed. And I'm a pig. When I go out to restaurants, I often order 2 meals. So, I mean, I eat big when I eat dinner. And so, having a full stomach and being still digesting food, it's not great for your sleep. Your body's trying to do repair, moving the lymphatic system of your brain. And then instead you're bogging it down with all this stuff in your stomach, and all the blood flow is having to go to your stomach to work on that rather than working on the repair of your body. So it's not wise. And that was another thing I noticed in Italy. The locals eat at 9 o'clock, and that's way too late for me to be eating. So we ate with the tourists like 6 or 7 o'clock, and it can be often hard to find restaurants. If you're not in a touristy area, it's hard to find a restaurant that's open that early. But anyways, yes. So eating dinner early and having a semi-empty stomach before bed really helped my sleep scores a lot. Also, getting blackout curtains. I didn't realize how much junk light was coming in my room. There's an apartment complex that's behind me, and their floodlights for their parking lot tend to shine right in my back windows here. And then I have a street light, coincidentally, right on my driveway. So that shines in the front of the house. Getting blackout curtains, again, showed a marked improvement in my sleep scores, and a sleep mask. So like everything together. Taping every little LED that's in the house, trying to make it as black and cave-like as possible. Those increase my sleep scores a lot. I still don't have Brian Johnson type sleep scores. I still don't have 100%, Whoop scores.
Yeah, I feel very lucky when I get 100% Whoop score. I've been trying to do a video for a while, something to the effect of how hard is it to get 100% sleep score for a month straight. And I've been trying for like 6 months. I mean, it's really hard.
Unless you're doing like the Michael Jackson propofol thing, knocking yourself out every night with some kind of pharmaceutical.
I wonder if you would actually get 100% sleep scores though, because I feel like you're deep and REM would be kind of messed up from that.
Well, I mean, again, I guess it depends on which app you're using. So Whoop gives you 100% if you sleep the right number of hours for your body. So it's not necessarily this was restorative sleep, but you at least got the amount of time in, and that's how you get 100% on a Whoop. Aura score probably more involved.
A little bit harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm tracking with a Whoop, and then I've got, this isn't an Aura. It's an Ultra Human. They just sent me a couple. So, but it's really interesting to see the differences in the data. And then I've got the 8 sleep as well, and so I get 3 different sleep scores. And I used to look at them really carefully, and now I'll just kind of glance at it and be like, oh, I did all right last night. So, but
I love when they disagree.
yeah.
And my Aura and Whoop disagree almost all the time.
Huge differences sometimes.
I think my Aura is more motivational, like, yay, you did great, keep it up and go get them today. And Whoop will be like, bro, you could have done better.
Yeah.
Whoop is pretty much always kicking my butt, like, yeah, okay, that wasn't great.
Do you use your Whoop's strain score to determine how hard you should work out, or not really?
I don't use it to drive what I do. I'll use it to look at after the fact and go, oh yeah, I really pushed it yesterday. I don't feel like I've got the luxury to be able to say, oh, my Whoop score wasn't that great, so I should probably go easy today. Especially when I was run training, it's like, all right, I'm on a schedule, I've got to get this run in tomorrow, so even though Whoop says you should probably take it easy, I would like to say I listen to it, but I don't.
On your website, it looks like you do quite a bit of flexibility training in the evenings, flexibility, stability. Do you want to walk me through what your protocol looks like for that?
Yeah, I'd like to say it's more screwing around than anything. It's not, that definitely is not, it's not regimented like maybe it could be. But while I'm standing around, instead of sitting around watching Netflix, I've got a Bosu ball right at the base of my couch and one of those teeter boards. And so I'll be just messing around with those, just having fun, but testing my balance. I had to refocus on my balance maybe 2 years ago. I'm trying to remember how long ago this was now. I got a concussion from a roller coaster ride at Cedar Point in Ohio on my birthday.
Wow.
I used to go to Cedar Point on my birthday every year, just like to celebrate my still youthfulness. And I said I was going to do that until the day I dropped. Well, I had to stop that early because I noticed that when I would come home from all those roller coaster rides, I would have a headache for at least a day afterwards. And I remember saying to my mom while she was still alive that I don't know if this is really good for my brain. If my head hurts like this, it's probably not healthy. But I didn't really take that seriously until this last time. I was on the Raptor, which was a favorite ride of mine. That was the last ride of the day. And the ride just stopped so fast. It felt like my brain smashed into my skull. And I remember my entire field of vision went down to this just tiny little dot and then sucked back, and all of a sudden I could see again. And I was just sitting there stunned on the ride, and my friends are like trying to pull me out, like, what are you doing? Come on, we got to go. And I'm like, I wasn't there. And my headache wasn't just for a couple hours. It lasted for a few weeks. And I went to the doctor and got diagnosed with concussion. And that's what started me doing hyperbaric, was for the concussion treatment. I wasn't really doing that for longevity at that point. I'm doing it now just for the fun of it. But yeah, that was pretty serious.
So do you think it's just the headaches were coming from just the motion, the quick stops and starts?
Constantly being thrown left and right and forward and backward from the quick stops, the quick starts. And yeah, I mean, roller coasters are pretty brutal. I know my neck would end up being sore, from being battered around. Just probably not healthy all the way around, even though it was fun.
I love roller coasters, but that's something to think about. I hadn't considered it in that way. Okay, so we've talked about kind of the core of your longevity protocol, the diet, sleep, exercise. I'm curious, you just mentioned hyperbaric. We've talked a little bit about supplements. What other interventions are you doing for longevity?
Interestingly enough, when I got my score for the Rejuvenation Olympics, I was not doing plasmapheresis at that point, and I wasn't doing hyperbaric regularly either. I picked both of those up after the fact to see if, maybe I could improve upon my pace of aging or my epigenetic score. I didn't really see those move the needle at all in either one of those scores, but I still think they're doing something valuable. Yeah, I mean, sauna. I love my sauna. That was my very first biohack purchase. I had heard Ben Greenfield talking about his, and I ended up buying the exact same brand, Clear Light Sanctuary. I bought the Sanctuary 3 sauna because I didn't have room in my basement for anything bigger. Bought a Juve panel. That was like my next big purchase. And Dr. Rondra Patrick talked so much about sauna and the benefits of sauna.
Is your sauna an infrared sauna?
It is, yeah. And I even added near infrared floodlights to it. So I mean, naturally it's far infrared and regular infrared, but I added 4 near infrared floodlights to it based on a video that I found on YouTube. And it makes it much hotter.
How long will you spend in the sauna?
So that depends too on what I'm doing. Most of the time it's between, I would say, 20 and 30 minutes, maybe 20 and 35 minutes. If I'm cheating instead of doing a meditation, if I'm watching Netflix instead, I can get really distracted and I can be in there for 45, 50, maybe even 60 minutes sometimes. And I'm usually pretty dehydrated at that point, but it's a great way to just take your mind completely off the fact that I'm hot right now and I'm sweating my butt off.
Supplements. Let's talk a little bit about supplements. You're taking quite a few. So I'm curious how you measure the effects of different supplements, how often you change things out, how often you change what you're experimenting with.
So while I was still working, I was way more regimented about this than I have been since. I was changing up my supplementation to move various blood markers. And so I was very, very detailed about, okay, I'm going to change this particular supplementation to move this particular marker for this month and see how this goes. And it was working pretty well. I would find that, okay, if I upped it by, this number of milligrams, I could see this, move by, so many units. And then, double or triple that. And I overshot by that much. So back it down. And so I was playing games like that with different markers for a while. I have to say I haven't done that since probably September when I retired. I've still been doing blood testing, but I haven't been doing it with any purpose of some specific result that I'm hoping to get from the change in supplements. And it's just only because my life has just completely, been upheaved since then, and having to put together a website and traveling and going to conferences and interviews, things like that are like things I never expected that would happen in my retirement. So neither here nor there. But yeah, to answer your question, that was my intent with the various supplements that I'm taking. And I'll take some specifically for things. Well, so for example, everything I take it's not something that I recommend everybody take. There's at one point a guy sent me a picture of, I think it was his kitchen counter, all of his supplements. And I'm looking at this, I'm going, how did this guy get this picture of my kitchen counter? Because it was everything I take. And then I read a little bit further and I realized he bought like all of the stuff off my web, like from that I recommended on my website. Well, I shouldn't say recommended, all the stuff that I'm taking, he bought. And I'm looking at some of this stuff and I'm like, dude, wait, why are you even taking that? You probably don't need that at your age. You know, I'm taking that for a specific situation of my own. You know, you really need to see your doctor first to just check and say, hey, do I need that or not? You know, like additional DHEA, sorry. He probably didn't need that. I was doing that because my DHEA at that point was off. So I was supplementing at that to try to bring it back into range. And I'm aiming at the range for healthy collegiate athletes. So not trying to get things into the reference range. Because as you know, reference ranges for blood testing, it's based on the population of sick people whose doctor said, oh, you've got this problem. Let's give you a blood test.
Yeah. Well, it's like what normal testosterone is now. Total testosterone goes, I think normal is all the way down to 300 now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's normal because that's what they see in the population, but that's not healthy.
I'm 24 years old getting into this. And if you could give any advice for young people that are getting into the longevity biohacking space, what would that advice be?
I think this is good advice, but it's not going to be coming from the direction you expect. It's to begin investing now financially for your longevity. Because if you're going to be living forever, well, or to be a very old age, you're not going to want to be working forever. You're going to retire at some point. You're going to want to retire at some point. And you need to have a plan. And at your age, if you begin socking away the most that you can into your 401k and your IRA, compounding is going to be your friend. Your money is going to grow so much better than if you wait to your 30s or your 40s. You've already lost the time horizon that's going to work in your favor for developing your wealth. And you're going to want wealth because there's going to be new cool biohacking stuff that's going to come out in the future. And it's going to be expensive initially. But if you want to be able to afford it and keep yourself, healthy and be able to utilize those things, you're going to need to have a good hunk of cash. And there is no get rich quick scheme. I know everybody, like back when I was a kid and maybe more so these days, they think that there's going to be this one great idea that they're going to have that's going to make them the next, billionaire. It's possible. It could happen. The odds in favor of it are pretty low, but the odds in favor of you becoming a multimillionaire by the time you retire are pretty high if you invest regularly. And so that, to me, that's the one solid piece of advice I give everybody. Start young, start early, invest the max. Every time you get a raise, put that raise into your 401k so that you don't even see it. You just continue to live off of what you were living off of before, so your lifestyle hasn't changed. But now you're just banking more and more each time, and it just keeps compounding and growing, and you're going to be very thankful for yourself for doing that someday.
I think that's great advice because from a stress standpoint, having money and not letting money be a primary driver of stress in your life, it probably cuts down on the amount of stress that you're going to have and experience by quite a bit to be in a financially sound place.
I'll tell you, I had some pretty crappy bosses through my career. I had some great ones, so don't get me wrong, but the crappy ones made me increase my 401k contribution even more because I'm like, I can't do this forever. I don't want to be in this rat race forever.
Thank you so much for sharing over a decade of biohacking wisdom and experience with us. And I would love an opportunity to meet you in person and go on a run one day. So
that'd be great. You'd have to slow down for me though, but
oh no, I like staying in zone 2. So
cool. I can do zone 2 all forever. So that's great.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm excited to share this with everybody.
Thank you for this. This was fun.